Hi, welcome back to Career Talk with Laura. This is my Read With Me series where I share things that I've learned from the books I'm reading. Today, I am reading Difficult Conversations, which is a self-help book that teaches you to negotiate conflict between two people. It's written by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen. This book breaks down how to decipher the underlying structure of every difficult conversation, start a conversation without defensiveness, listen for the meaning of what is not being said, stay balanced in the face of attacks and accusations, and move from emotion to productive problem solving. This book is full of great advice and discussions. You can use these techniques in a variety of situations with your family, with your friends, your boss, your colleagues, your partner, basically anyone that you care to maintain a relationship with. Today, I will share some insights I learned from this book on how to approach difficult conversations. Sometimes people avoid having difficult conversations because they don't want to rock the boat. However, sometimes you have to have that conversation in order to move forward. When you're about to discuss an issue, you might think you already
know all the facts,
and you'll go in there to prove that you're right and the other person should change. If both people have that attitude, then it just becomes a shit show, or someone is the loser. But how often does that actually resolve the issue? Your approach should not be to fight or to yield, rather to understand. First, you gotta check your assumptions. You may be prone to making mistakes in your assumptions about intentions. There are two common mistakes that can really damage your communications. 1. You assume that the other person intended to make the impact that their actions had on you. You have all the good intentions while the other person intended the worst. If the other person failed to do something,
it's because they're irresponsible and they don't care.
If you fail to do something,
it's because you're stressed and overworked.
You need to recognize that you're making an assumption and disentangle the impact from the intent. 2. You assume that if you explain your good intentions, then all is well. Good intentions don't negate a negative impact. You still need to acknowledge the other person's feelings. Instead of going in trying to prove you're right and change the other person, try to have a learning conversation. There are no winners or losers in a learning conversation, and everyone benefits from a better understanding of each other. Everyone has their own version of the story. You might think that you have all the best reasons to hold your stance, but the other person might have equally valid reasons to hold their stance. So what does a learning conversation look like? Let's contrast a typical battle approach from a learning conversation. Instead of assuming that you know all you need to know to understand what happened and persuade the other person you're right, you assume that each person is bringing different information and perceptions to the table, and there are likely to be important things that each person doesn't know. The goal would be to explore each other's stories, how each person understands the situation, and why. Instead of assuming that you know the other person's intentions and to let them know what they did was wrong, you recognize that you only know what you intended as well as the impact of the other person's actions on you. You don't know and you can't know what's in their head. Your goal in the conversation would be to share the impact they had on you and find out what they were thinking. Also, you want to find out what impact you have on them. Instead of trying to assign blame and getting the other person to take responsibility to make amends, you recognize that both people probably have some contribution in the situation, and you seek to understand how each of your actions have interacted to produce the result. Instead of completely avoiding talking about feelings or completely dumping your feelings onto the other person, you recognize that feelings are the heart of situations and they can be complex. You make the effort to dig to understand your feelings, and you try to address feelings, yours and theirs, without judgments or attributions. You acknowledge the feelings before trying to problem solve. Instead of having a black and white view of yourself and other people, like you're either good or bad, competent or incompetent, with no in between, and then defending this all or nothing self-image, you recognize that there are a lot at stake for each person psychologically, and people are complex. No one is perfect. No one likes to be accused of being a bad person. You seek to understand the identity issues for each person and build a more complex self-image to maintain your balance and give yourself room to be imperfect. When you have learning conversations, you should be asking open-ended questions that allows the other person to tell their story rather than yes or no questions loaded with your own assumptions. If you're asking a bunch of loaded questions, it'll look like you're just trying to push the other person to admit you're right, and the other person is going to get defensive. Although, once they have expressed themselves, you can ask yes or no questions to confirm your understanding. For example, instead of asking, "Did you think this when you did that?" you should ask, "What was your thought process when you did that?" By having a learning conversation, you can get to the heart of the issue and have a better chance of opening up to each other in order to move forward. These tips help me to clear up misunderstandings with the people around me. I hope they work for you. What are some situations where you want to have a learning conversation? Leave a comment and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Bye.